So marhaba, welcome Layali and Sander, Ustaza Layali and Ustaz Sander, to the first All Things Arabic podcast episode for season number 2. I'm Ustaza Caroline. We all have met each other sort of informally before, but I'm really excited to learn more about you guys today and talk about the future of Arabic language education here in the United States and then also outside of the Arabic speaking world. So I know all three of us work in different school settings. Leali, you're in primary. I'm at the college level. Ustaz Sander, you're in secondary, middle, and high school. I would love to just hear a little bit more from you all. How did you get into teaching Arabic, running Arabic language programs, becoming this super passionate activist for the teaching and learning of Arabic today? Can we start with Layali, Ustaza Layali?
شكرا. أهلا وسهلا ومبسوطة إني أشوفك مرة تانية. I'm glad to see you again. Arabic has been a big part of my life for a long time. Before the teaching, I just loved Arabic, and I was writing and publishing stuff, like even since I was in high school. It's been a passion of mine, but I didn't get into language education until I had my own kids. My oldest was in kindergarten, and he was learning Chinese in a Chinese immersion program. And that's when I started thinking, like, we need to teach Arabic the same way. And and there was kind of interest at his school. They're like, when I found out that he speaks Arabic, they're like, why don't we start an after-school club for Arabic? We have already for so many other languages. Can we, get you on board to also offer Arabic? I'm like, sure. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'll learn. And I volunteered to start that after-school club. And from there, I was like, let's do this more. And there was more and more interest at different schools. And then I found out about summer camps. Like, he also got into one of those Star Talk immersion summer camps. He loved it. His level in speaking Chinese dramatically improved in one summer. We can do this in Arabic too. So
And those programs are amazing because they fully fund the students, the teachers to teach and the students to study. So how did you go from that one or the couple of after-school programs to running Kalima? And what is Kalima? Tell us about it.
After trying the after-school club and really liking this whole thing and feeling like I'm making a difference, for my kids and all the other kids that were interested in Arabic. I looked into, registering Kalima as, an organization and offering this more. And, so there was a lot of interest from families in the region. So there was a demand, I would say, and especially like, because Arabic is usually like associated with Islamic studies or Sunday schools, which are usually at mosques, and this program being at schools with no religious aspect to it, it really was needed.
It's for all.
Yes, exactly.
Arabic language for all.
Yes.
I love that. Shukran kteer for just sharing with us a little bit more. I'm sure we'll hear more about Kalima and your whole journey and all of your thoughts about what's working well in teaching Arabic nowadays, and maybe where we have some room to grow to keep growing that Arabic language interest. What about you, Ustaz Sander?
Well, Aslema, nice to see you guys. And great to be here with you guys. I got into Arabic teaching sort of by accident, actually. And so I think we share that in our story a little bit. I loved Arabic from basically day one when I was taking in university. And I remember having a conversation with my mother and saying, well, if I like this language, I'd like to pursue it and see if I can get it. And at the time, I spoke French, and the challenge was, can I get it to the level that my French is at? Which I've realized after the fact was a mistake, because my French has now gotten worse and atrophied, but never mind. So yeah, from the first day, I kind of knew this is a language that I want to pursue, and I want to travel abroad and study. And then coming back, having spent the better part of a year in Tunisia and then a couple of months in the Sultanate of Oman, came back and felt like I had been doing a lot of taking. You know, this is amazing people in both countries that welcomed me into their homes, that taught me their language, their traditions, and kind of worked with me to better understand them. And I kind of felt, you know, this is wonderful, but I've been on the receiving end of this incredible generosity, and how can I give back? And so I actually started by tutoring English, because there was a program at Georgetown that allowed us to go into schools and tutor English. And DC still, but especially at the time, had some real challenges in the public schools, especially around childhood literacy. So I thought, well, maybe what I want to do is be a childhood teacher and work with, you know, elementary and young middle school students on improving their literacy skills. And so I applied for a bunch of jobs, and none of them came up, right? And so I sort of thought, okay, well, maybe this isn't right for me, and kind of started looking in other places. And then just by chance, one of my former Arabic professors, Dr. Karen Riding, said to me, you know, when you took teaching Arabic as a foreign language, it was clear that you weren't just taking it for theoretical purposes. You were really interested in how people learn languages, and I think you might be a really great Arabic teacher. Are you interested? And QFI was working at the time with the Center for Applied Linguistics and Dr. Kathy Keatley. And so I met with QFI and Dr. Keatley, and they plugged me into the Washington Latin After School program, which was in its first year, or in its second year. And I showed up not knowing anything about how to teach Arabic other than what I had studied in books and what I had experienced myself, and sort of learned, as you were describing, Layali, kind of watching and learning as you were going and following the students' interests and really trying to help them kind of find what they would plug into with Arabic, but without ever sacrificing that need to actually be moving Arabic as the center element. I think there are a fair number of programs that get into it for the same reasons, but then find, sorry for saying it, but Debke and Tabbouleh Club, right? And then that's all, right? That's what you end up doing.
Yes.
And
dancing and eating.
Yeah.
Which go really well together.
They do. And there's nothing wrong with Debke or Tabbouleh, but I think students, they actually crave more, right? That's a wonderful way to get them hooked. It's also a wonderful way to deepen their studies as they continue to learn. But while students want to have fun, they also want to feel that they're making real progress and that they can do a thing that other people can't do. Because at the end of the day, you can learn Debke in maybe 10, 15 minutes. I mean, you're not going to lead a troop in 10, 15 minutes. Obviously, there are amazing people who can do fantastic things in Debke. But for our students, I think that's not their area of real investment. They want to understand, well, why is it that they do Debke? Or, you know, what's the man doing when he's swinging the thing in front? You know, they want to understand the why as well. And so that sort of became my passion, is helping students to start to uncover some of the why and some of their own why. We were talking today in my class about Halloween. I have my kind of advanced students write about holidays so that they can get a better perspective on their own selves. And asking them the question, like, okay, if you're going to refer to Halloween as a holiday of something, because in Arabic you have to say Eid el or Munasbat el, what would you guys say? And just watching their faces, kind of this thing that they've done their whole lives, having no idea what you finish that phrase with. What do you call
holiday of what?
Right, exactly, right? What do you call it? And so they finally landed on the holiday of sweets and masks, which I think is a fair enough description. But watching them entertain, for example, like, well, no, it's not the holiday of death. That's not right. But it is from the Day of the Dead in some ways. So we have to get that, you know, and just, anyway. So I love that process of students discovering Arabic, but also discovering something new about themselves. And I think you can really only meaningfully do that when you're making real progress in communicative linguistic Arabic, but also constantly self-analyzing and thinking about, what does this mean about who I am and what the world is like.
And maybe how does that help me better connect to the world around me,
Absolutely.
close to me, but also possibly geographically far away from me. Well, I know I've shared a little bit with you all about my journey becoming an Arabic language teacher as well. Similarly to Ustaz Sander, I had studied French for a really long time and then started learning more about French history in North Africa and signed up for Arabic 101 in college and just felt all of these teachers pour into me in a way that my French teachers were, you know, being supportive, but there just wasn't the same amount of love you know, that I could feel, and generosity and genuine, you know, attempt to like create this connection and build this relationship between students who didn't speak Arabic and Arabic speakers in the world. And went on to study your former teacher, Catherine Writing. Study her books.
Karen Writing, yeah.
Karen Writing, that's right. Read and study from her books in my master's for teaching Arabic as a second language. But I didn't know that I wanted to teach. I just knew that I wanted to learn more about Arabic. And so it took a couple of years in being, you know, an interpreter or a translator or working in social services to realize that I did want to really give back and pour into other students, but to do that through language teaching. And really, as you said, Ustaz Sander, to give students the opportunity to transform, you know, because you never go through this growth process and come out the same exact person on the other side. I don't ever think we're new people, but the more you gain a deeper understanding of yourself, the more kind of expansive you become as a person, and the more you're able to connect. I think connection's a big theme for today. We're going to be talking about the future of Arabic language education. I think we're all very passionate to see Arabic language go from a less commonly taught language to perhaps a more commonly taught language. That's my number one goal as a language teacher, among many goals that I have. And I'd love to just, you know, open up the floor and kind of talk about what's working really well, you know, in engaging and motivating students and connecting to communities and growing these Arabic language learning opportunities. And then also, what are some of the major challenges you're facing on, you know, the primary school level, the secondary school level, and then I can speak to, you know, the college and the university level. So what do you all think is going well?
For me, I think that there's a lot of like new ways of teaching that are making people more interested in the language, but in general, like Arabic as a less commonly taught language has a reputation that, you know, unfortunately a lot of people like buy this, I would say, rumor like of Arabic being hard, and they don't even, you know, give it a chance before they just judge that, okay, it's one of the hardest languages, we can never get it. The way that you know, to go around this is to highlight all the like fun stuff and the cultural stuff and the really real life connections, I would say, to not just the language as a language, but the people who speak the language, the countries where this language is spoken. There's a very rich history, you know, for the language and the cultures and the people. So there's a whole world out there that you just, you know, don't want to dismiss just because the text, you know, is looks, you know, foreign to you. Yeah, you know. So if like we approach things in a way that, you know, it's okay. It takes time to like decode and recode. I call it decode and recode in terms of reading.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
And it's just like coding, you know. It's a new language, it's a new world. You get into it, you know, you just have to spend the effort and you get it. Nobody like ever spends the effort and still not get it. But it's also all the other things. It's not just the text and decoding.
Do your students say, or have you ever felt, you know, as a former student of the language yourself, gosh, Arabic is so hard. Like, this is such a challenge.
Yeah, but I think I maybe have a different take on this. I find that my students, yes, of course, they're frustrated by it, but by and large, a lot of them, they like that. And to downplay it, I think, in a way, is to do them a disservice, because Arabic is one of the most difficult languages to learn. I think what we need to do as educators is to frame for them why it's difficult, right? There are political challenges for why it's difficult. There are historical reasons for why it's difficult. There are linguistic reasons why it's difficult, kind of internalized cultural reasons and biases. There's all kinds of reasons why for American students it can be difficult to learn Arabic. And I think that we need to not confuse, at least in my opinion, we need to not confuse actual difficulty with sort of the unconquerable task, right? Because the reality is that my students will look at their peers who are in French and say, well, why are they able to progress to the intermediate low or intermediate mid-level after just a year? And we are struggling to get to novice mid after just a year. And so sometimes I'll joke that it's my fault, and I tell them, just blame Porcelli and you'll be fine. But it also helps that they're learning Chinese similar to what your son was doing. They're learning, there are students at our school who are learning Chinese and Arabic. There are students at our school who are learning Arabic, but they have friends who are taking Chinese, and they can kind of see that, hey, these languages are in fact more challenging. There are aspects of the language, not just the script, right, but the pronunciation and the dialectical variation and the vocabulary. The quantity of vocabulary in Arabic is extraordinary. And I think, for me anyway, my task as a teacher is not so much to tell them like, hey, it's the same as any other language. It just takes time and you can work hard and you'll learn it. But actually to say, hey, this is really hard, but there are strategies you can use to overcome that difficulty. And then also to help them understand, like, this is something that you can do. Like one of my go-to phrases in Arabic one is there are 370 million Arabs who can do this, so you can too, right? So it's not that it's undoable, but it is a actually difficult task, and some students come because of that. We retain quite a number of our middle school students because there aren't a lot of Arabic offerings in the district or even the surrounding areas. There are some private Islamic schools, but many of our students, the vast minority of drastic minority of our students are Muslim or of Arab heritage. So most of our students are not of Arab heritage and are not Muslim. And so they would not go to a Muslim school most likely, and they're not going to go to a private school just to have Arabic. And they're not living in neighborhoods that have a lot of Arabs in them, but they have the benefit of, just around the corner you have, large Arab populations in this area.
That they can
exactly. Yeah. And so showing them, helping them understand that actually it is a part of your life. I send them on a scavenger hunt to find the Arabic that's on the buses in DC, because there is Arabic written on the buses in DC and they can find it. So helping them discover that Arabic already is a part of their life without hiding from them the truth of, hey, there's a lot of variation in vocabulary and there is dialectical variation, and that is going to be a challenge for you. While also giving them the tools to just kind of, as I said, blame Porcelli, right? Just be mad at me if anything doesn't work out, rather than mad at yourself that you think you can't do it. Because where I think we all agree is that we don't want students to feel a level of frustration that then stops their progress. We want to find ways to inspire. I'm surprised, Layali, that you have the experience of students at that young of an age already having a sense that Arabic is difficult. Where do you think that comes from?
I was thinking along the same lines. I don't think the perception of language difficulty is the same for different ages. I think for younger kids, it depends on when they actually start getting exposed to Arabic in particular, but other languages in general. And the later the age, when they are even, perceiving of languages as different and, going right to left versus left to right, or that just because it sounds this way doesn't mean that's what it means. There are so many different approaches to why a language is difficult. It's not just the script or the like how fast you go up the scale, right, of proficiency. I don't think the measures are as accurate when it comes to the younger kids. And that's a difficulty for the teachers and us educators to assess, with the younger kids. There's a lot less tools available anyway to assess levels of proficiency.
More accurately.
Yeah. So that's part of the difficulty, I think.
I think too, so before coming to teach on the college level, I taught on the elementary school level at an immersion school, and the students themselves wouldn't carry their perceptions that the language was hard, but their parents would come in and they'd be like, oh my gosh, you're doing such a hard thing. And or their older siblings, who weren't in the immersion school would be like, oh, that's so hard, And so I think, just like any younger child, picks up the perceptions of those close people around them, they would kind of start to internalize that and then bring that into class. But just naturally, as you said, Layali, the younger they start, just the more open and flexible, I think, mindset, vocal cords, like everything is. And I would actually see that our learners that came in to the Arabic Immersion Magnet School in Houston, who already came with a second language, even if they weren't biliterate, because they're all young, so they're all learning how to read and write. But even if they were just exposed to a second language at home or in their community, there was so much less hesitation or fear, and it was just this exploration, and you took on whatever was in front of you, and maybe you had help from your friend or your teacher or your parent or your sibling, or you did it on your own, but like it might take longer or it might take shorter, but you just did it because it was fun and it was exciting. And the college students, almost all of them come to study Arabic because they're like, it's a challenge. This is hard. I want to do this. And so, I asked them recently, very early on, I teach them the words sa'ab and sahil, or like nos. So is it hard? Is it easy? Or is it somewhere in the middle? And whenever I ask them how something is and they go, sa'ab ktir, I say, mumtaz. Like, that's so awesome. I'm so glad for you that it's challenging. And as a student, I remember, I can't remember when I picked up this phrase, but the phrase was, اللغة تحتاج إلا الوقت. Language takes time. Any language, and I think that stands for learning anything new, but it's just always stuck with me. And so I think that is what I constantly remind them of.
I want to piggyback on something you mentioned. I teach at the college level as well, but my main, thing is the younger kids. That's what I love more. But like at the college level, there has been this kind of trend, I want to say, or kind of a move for the kind of like the kids who they like to accomplish things, they like to check things off their list, and there's this difficult language check, so I'm a little bit worried of this thing or trend. I don't know what to call it, but like it's good, but it kind of narrows the interest to like a very particular set of students who are accomplishing the hard workers and all of that, and that's not going to serve us in the long term if our goal is to really teach Arabic more, have it more commonly taught, not less commonly taught. So I feel like we can't really glorify these students who are, challenging themselves to learn something hard and only focus on those and only want those. We want more. We want the kids who are there just to eat. I actually, when my son was in middle school, I did an after school club in his school. Again, but the focus was totally different because middle school, they really don't want to sit and read and write, and I had bags and bags of resources printed out, worksheets and all that. A lot of these things would just go to the school and come back from school untouched. They wanted to cook, they wanted to
experience.
They wanted to dance, they wanted to drum and experience the musical instruments, like really like touch on like hands-on stuff we did. So that club was kind of part upcycling and part cooking. So like every other week we would alternate either cooking or upcycling. And within that, as we were doing things, we were speaking, listening to music, memorizing, greeting each other, doing all kinds of things. So like sometimes the passive and even the easy things would give you results, not just the hard things,
I think part of it comes back to something that you mentioned earlier, which, like, I'll admit I'm still growing in every day, but I think it comes down to these, not newer, but just teaching methods for languages in general as they develop. But also, Sandra, you kind of referred to this a little bit, like, one of the boundaries that Arabic teachers have come up against, especially outside of the Arabic speaking world, is I've frequently been told, well, this is how it's done. Like, this is how you teach واحد اثنين ثلاثة أربعة, you know? And that's how I learned. I learned, like, only modern standard Arabic, اللغة العربية الفصحى فقط, like, in class. And some of it was experiential, but the experiential stuff was all outside of class. You know, it was club time or cultural activity time. And, you know, but wanting that diversity of a student and what drives them to be there, you know, I think we as educators need to be more accessible, you know, in the type of educational experience that we're offering, where there's something for the tactile learner. There's something for that super language nerd who only wants to learn about roots. You know, there's something for that student who loves singing.
Yeah.
You know, there's something for the student who wants to do creative writing in Arabic. So I think we're really being forced in a healthy way as educators to expand our teaching methods and be a lot more accessible and interactive and engaging with the types of teaching offerings that we're hosting. Do you have an opinion?
Well, I think it's absolutely right that we have to be accessible. But the thing that I'm hearing from both of you about both your experiences as teachers and Caroline, your experiences as a learner that I share as well, is this idea of pouring yourself into your students and having a passion for the material that you teach. And I think that is sort of our greatest asset. It's very rare that you meet somebody who teaches Arabic that doesn't love Arabic in some way, right? I mean, there will be people who can't stand Nahwi and can't, you know, don't want to talk about grammar, and that's fine. But there's always some point of connectivity. I mean, at the end of the day, Arabic is both a very fast-growing language and also, in a way, a language that's in danger. And here I'm talking globally rather than in the United States. I mean, the number of Gulfis that are teaching their children English as their first language and are kind of leaving Arabic by the wayside, or it's becoming strictly reserved for Sunday schools and for religious education. And yeah, they might be using Arabic in the house, but the primary language they want their students to learn, or their children to learn, is English, right? So in a way, Arabic is an endangered language. And so for that reason, I think anybody who's teaching it has a real passion for it, right? There's something that you connect to, because there's not that kind of initial, let's say, kind of motive for learning Arabic. If you are a native Arabic speaker, there's not that motive to push you forward unless you have something that you connect to. And I want that for my students from the American perspective, to find something in Arabic that they really enjoy, whether that's the fashion or whether that's the dance or whether that's the music or the script or the root system or something, right? Find something that you really enjoy. And I consider my work as a teacher a kind of journey to find what that thing is. And frankly, Arabic can plug into anything. There's really no passion that a student can have that it can't flex to plug into. It's just a matter of learning enough about the student and then finding and having the expertise in Arabic to understand what the relationships are and to recognize your own limits and say, well, that's actually not an area I know much about, but I do know that this field exists, and let's plug you into that. The other thing I was going to mention, I think, is that developmentally it matters too, right? I think that we would lose an awful lot of students if we were to tack away from the people who are taking it because it is challenging. Not just that, we also lose a fair amount of motivation even for students who are not taking it for that reason. For example, I have students who take the language because their brother or sister took it, or because they heard that it's fun to take Arabic, or because they heard about me, or they heard about somebody else with some friend who took it. And then once they start taking it, it actually becomes a great asset for them as they apply to colleges, because colleges and universities recognize Arabic as a challenging language. If we were to downplay that, and I always say to my students, shh, don't tell anybody. What makes Arabic difficult is only the vocabulary. The grammar is actually pretty easy, but don't tell anybody. And the reason you don't tell anybody, because you're actually undercutting your own value as a student if you start to talk about Arabic as, oh, it's, sahl man, there's no problem at all. I can deal with this. I think we have to balance here, right? Because if we want it to be more commonly taught, we do need the people who are coming just for food. Absolutely. No question about it. And my context is unique because the students who come to me, they take it as part of a graduation requirement. So I'm going to have students coming through the door regardless. So we need the students who are, I love that phrase, right? The people who are coming just for the food. We need them, but we also need it to continue to be a rigorous endeavor that's going to help students, boost up their resume, right? And see, hey, look, I can do this. and help students experience something that many other people have not, right? And they become then cultural ambassadors. Even after just their first couple of weeks, the number of my Arabic 1 students who are having conversations with extended family members who are saying, wow, you're taking Arabic? Tell me something you're learning. That's a unique opportunity that we would lose if we were to downplay that Arabic was somehow just the same as every other language. That said, my vision is that it will be eventually just the same as any other language, that somebody could sit here and say, yeah, I took Arabic the same as you took French, the same as you took German, right? That would be beautiful. So I think we have a balance to play here.
Yeah.
And then Layali, you're coming from a context, I think it's worth mentioning. All of the students that you're teaching are in some kind of immersion program. Is that correct? They're coming to you after school, but they're coming from an immersion program, not Arabic immersion, but some...
No, not really.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood.
Like summer camps are open to everybody. A lot of kids have zero background in Arabic. And even in after schools, like sometimes it's a matter of what lines up with their schedule. And like sometimes they have zero clue like what they signed up for, so it's a toss-up, but I would say there's more intentionality for the majority of my students than a chances like that.
The reason I brought it up is only because I think, at least in terms of how I understood the backstory of you going to volunteer at your son's school, which is an immersion school for Chinese, the idea being that in that select community, people understand and value using Arabic as the communicative language in the classroom, right? I think that when I was referencing before the kind of Debke Club, right? It's not meant to be rude. It's just to say that there are some places where we're not using the language. And I'm imagining your club as a place where we're using the language as we're cooking. We're using the language as we're drumming, right? Which is a beautiful thing because they're now internalizing this. They have this experience
in language,
in the language that connects them with the language. And then ultimately that becomes part of who they are. And I think that perhaps is the level that you and I share that maybe doesn't exist as much on the university level, which is this idea that we are, as much as we are transforming and molding, we are actually getting into we're on the ground level of who students turn out to be. And so our task is to give them a set of positive experiences that they then associate as they go on.
Can I ask you all, because I don't hear this as much from my students, but I know you all are probably very connected to the parents and the families and the communities of your students being in K-12. Are the reactions from friends and family exclusively positive? Like, wow, mashallah, like that's so amazing. You're studying Arabic, teach me something new. Or have you guys come up against some negative stereotypes about studying Arabic or Arabic language and cultures, especially, being in the U.S. and having our quite complicated history, with the Arabic-speaking world and how our media documents that and our history books. And I'm curious to hear from you all.
I want to mention something that's not so much of a positive experience.
That's okay.
But like after the after school club experience kind of took off and succeeded in my son's school, and as the kids were transitioning to different schools, whether for magnet programs or middle schools and all of that, I kind of approached people in the school district administration and I said, how about we can develop some kind of a program where we introduce Arabic to the kids, not just as an after-school club, but more like, line it up. Yes, line it up with some of the, markers or whatever, like they, have. And initially there was a lot of hesitation, and I remember this very vividly. And I still can't believe like the response from one of the people I approached was, this is a very diverse county. We cannot open it up to all the languages that we have available. If we do, then there's a significant Sikh community who's going to want to teach their language. And then there's a significant this and that. And they mention, and I'm like, this is an administrator in the school district who's confusing the religion with the language. Unfortunately, that is a reality for a lot of people, and that's where a lot of hesitation comes from. Another experience kind of along the same lines was when I did the after school club in my son's middle school. There was actually an audition or kind of like tryout thing to select from different providers who can, give these programs. And, again, one of the panelists on that, in that setting was like, okay, and I had proposed like we can talk about Ibn Battuta's journey as something like that.
Yeah, around the world.
Yes.
One of the greatest world travelers of all time, which I never learned about in my history textbooks. I learned about it in college. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So one of the panelists was like, well, there's a lot of Ibn Battuta's story is religion based, so like he even set off on that journey because for a religious purpose. So like, how are we gonna, tell the parents and the kids that this is not religion? And I'm like, seriously? Like, I'm not there to teach religion. I'm not qualified, actually. Like, I don't, want to, like, even in like Sunday school settings, like I just teach the Arabic. I don't teach, the religion, because I feel like this is a big responsibility that's, needs some qualification. So it's not, and this confusion, I think, is part of the hesitation on so many people's parts, that they think there might be, embedded messages or embedded, there's also on the other side of that, there's like a lot of people who've traveled to Arab countries, for example, not for any particular reasons, or maybe they like stopped, for transit in Qatar or in Dubai or something, and that was their very first exposure to Arabic as a language, seeing it, in the terminals in the airports, or hearing it like announced in, the different places, and that they get curious and like, they want their kids to learn it, or they themselves, as adults. That's, that's a significant thing to highlight, that you can't escape, a major language like Arabic, if you are, if you claim to be a world citizen, at least, right? Like,
it's a pretty great response.
Yeah.
No, and I think, and I do want to hear Ustaz Sanders' experiences as well. But I think a lot, at my university, we have this thing called the Global Guarantee. And it's part of the university's mission for its students to provide experiential quality opportunities for global engagement, and that can look like virtual exchange. It can look like study abroad. It can look like doing an internship in another country. It can look like working within your own community in multilingual and multi-ethnic ways. But these are these real skills that are in the education system nowadays, where I think, especially through COVID, as isolated as everyone felt, we all simultaneously felt our global connection over this experience that every single human being in the world, on every continent and every country, was experiencing. And I think coming out of COVID, you've seen in the field of education just all of this language about what does it mean to like graduate our students as global citizens of the world. So I think about that a lot. And, Arabic is I'm going to go off the cuff here, but I see statistics that floats between being the 4th and the 5th most widely spoken language across the globe, one of the 6 languages of the UN, and so our students need it, for their global futures. But I'll turn it over to Ustaz.
Well, no, I'm curious. I want to ask you guys, both of you have brought up this idea of global citizenship, and I think, happy to talk in a moment about some of the challenges we faced or parental reactions, but just from your experiences, both as learners and teachers and watching your students grow, what is it that we offer to these students that is global citizenship? Because, yes, Arabic may be the 4th or 5th largest language, but okay, and so, they can work through a translator. You don't need it. What is it that makes them global citizen? Is it just the fact that they don't need to work through a translator? Are we saying that it's merely linguistic, or is there something beyond that that we're offering to them? Because I think in some ways that's the response to families, right? You said it yourself. When I'm responding to administrators or to families who don't understand, I'm going to say, well, look, you're going to encounter Arabic if you claim to be a global citizen. So is it just that, well, when I see the writing in the airport, now I know that's Arabic? Is it a global awareness? Is it knowing that there are 370 million Arabs out there? What is it that we are offering them that's making them global citizens?
You want me to go first, or do you want to go first? Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot recently because I did a workshop for faculty on developing intercultural competency, which is this other, really big word that floats around in our field. As we're language educators, we know that language and culture are connected. They're inextricable from one another. So how do you develop a student's, language proficiencies and at the same time, deepen their awareness, understanding of, and also I would say desire for engagement with the cultures that speak that language. And at the workshop, the biggest thing that stuck with me is we will never be fully culturally competent in any culture, even in our own culture, because we're constantly learning, cultures are constantly developing. And so it's not a matter of, oh, I've reached A, B, C, D, E, F, G of I know these things about Ibn Battuta and how many Arabic speakers are there in the world and, the entire root system. It's about this desire to know more and a curiosity for engagement with an open mind. And I think in that process, and you spoke about this earlier, when you open yourself up to the rest of the world, that might not be that little world in that community that you grew up in, you immediately start asking questions to yourself about, oh, okay, well, why do I talk this way? Or why do I eat this food? Or why do I practice this holiday? Or why do I interact with my siblings this way? So you immediately start to grow as an individual in your understanding of yourself, as well as in your, I would just say, understanding, openness, and engagement with the world around you and outside of you. I don't think there's necessarily a level, whereas we do have these levels with language proficiency. And, the language teacher in me wants to say, yes, of course it comes with language proficiency and capacities. And I think that would be an amazing and ideal scenario. But I do think at the end of the day, it comes down to just an openness and awareness and a willingness to engage.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's kind of this self-awareness and then a curiosity and some kind of continual growth that's coming out of that curiosity and self-awareness. I guess the challenge that somebody might offer, and then Layali, I'd love to hear what you think about how we build these foundational skills. The challenge that somebody might offer is, well, my student can develop those in other classes. They don't need Arabic. They don't even need a world language, which I think for all of us is it feels absurd, but it is a world that we are entering into. And I think it might be worth discussing a little bit more at length, kind of how do we counter that? How do we acknowledge what they're saying and the validity of some of what they are saying when they say that? And then also how do we counter what is the sort of key that Arabic and the language offers? Leali, what do you see in terms of global citizenship as you're building your students and having these students come to your Kalima program and then the summer programs as well? What do you see as the value add, to use that language around it?
So I think global citizenship is a very, wide thing. It's not any particular check marks or particular traits in a person, but it's more like it's also not just this time and place right now, right? It's also transcending back in time, how one of the things I like to emphasize in our programs, because they're STEM-based programs, specifically the summer camps, were very STEM or STEAM-based. There's a lot of science, technology, concepts. So connecting to, the very first camera that was ever invented, so a lot of the common mainstream educational materials and, like, in general, like if you just Google, like, who invented this, who invented that, it's usually the European names that come up first, right? But like you need to dig deeper and like really, like, this is a lot of times the very first time my students hear that, oh no, even before those European inventors, scaled it up, right? Like there were like the roots of it, or like the very first saplings of these inventions or these concepts came from Arab and Muslim. Sometimes they're Muslim, not Arab inventors as well, but like within the time when Arabic was so famous and like it was actually cool to speak Arabic back then. And
it's still cool. I promise. We're bringing it back.
But yeah, so it's traveling back in time is a cool thing to younger kids, and maybe not as appealing, I guess, to college kids and all of that. But like whether it's Ibn Battuta's journey or so many other inventors, we bring back to now and we make the connection. Like we wouldn't have this and this and this if it wasn't for Maryam al-Istarlabi, for example, in Syria, So, and a lot of times it's like mind blowing to kids, especially like in the middle school ages. They're like, we had no clue. Like we probably would not have ever found out if it wasn't for this program. Right. So,
I actually did have a college student write an essay about Maryam al-Astrolabi. And they connected it to horoscopes, which, I mean, a lot of my college students are really into astrology, which is great. But yeah, and I think, there are some of those college students who do, you ask them like, who loves literature, who loves history? And there's not like too many hands that go up, but there's a few that really love it. But I do think that especially this generation now, with all of their open access to technology, I think most of the students feel a very particular way, especially the older they get, about what are they learning and how are they learning it and what does it mean? Because, like my third year students, they learn all about Ibn Battuta, but the way that I get them to engage with the curriculum is having them debate, should we in America have learned history through the eyes of Christopher Columbus or Ibn Battuta? And they debate it because this generation really, they want to feel this sense of ownership around knowledge and what they're choosing to do and who they're choosing to be with that knowledge. So I find that there is, I'm going to say, social justice. There's this like social justice element where they're recognizing that, they can't just read something in a book and be like, okay, this is true. They're acknowledging that there are multiple people in this experience and every single person is having a different and valid experience. And it's encouraging that curiosity to consider all of those different perspectives and then make up your mind about what you think about it and still be open to learning more and growing more. That's how I think we can really engage those learners from the young age all the way up to college.
Yeah, I think, Layali, what you were saying about history and kind of attributing some of the benefits of our modern world, time travel, I love that idea of like we're time traveling through Arabic, we're exploring. We're kind of experiencing this language as a world opener, right? As a kind of new world view. And then what you said just now, Caroline, about this idea of like meaning giving, right? I think we're like starved in a lot of ways in modern society of meaning, and our students feel that. They really do. I mean, we were talking about this in the prep for the podcast, this idea that like long format podcasts are becoming more popular. Well, why is it? Because everything it's just these tiny little 3-second clips, and people feel that there's meaning that's missing and there's humanity that's missing. Quite a number of my students, I think, come into the Arabic classroom sensing that they haven't been told the whole truth, that there's something about the stories that they've heard regarding Arabic and the Middle East that just isn't the full picture. And I think we have a responsibility as educators to try to open their mind to some basic historical facts, but also to kind of inculcate that idea of curiosity and to show them that there are things that we don't know, and to admit when we're wrong and to admit when we make a mistake. That's sort of my, I would say, both pleasure and privilege as a non-native speaker, is that I'm making mistakes all the time in Arabic, both with cultural references, historical references, and the opportunity to go in front of students and to say, you know, I got that wrong yesterday. I was actually off base, or, oh, I don't know how to say that. Let's look it up. Or, you know, let's call in a native speaker and ask if they can figure this thing out. Like, I think that is a great opportunity to offer them the chance to really build some of those skills of asking, you know, exploring, etc. And then the opportunity to face off against difficult linguistic challenge. And from my perspective, the thing that we offer as world language teachers to global citizenship is a degree of empathy for those who are learning English, right? Which I do not believe is learnable in any other way. I do not think you can empathize with somebody who does not speak English natively until you have tried to learn a challenging language or just any other language. And once you've done that and you've really tried, you understand why the person that you're talking to may speak with a slight accent or forgets a word, and you're going to have the empathy, whereas if you've never learned a language, you're not going to know that. So that's what I would offer linguistically anyway, as a thing that we are teaching our kids. But it's not, I mean, at the high school and college level, and maybe even the middle school, you can offer them that reflection question. Right. But it's really something that you learn by doing, and you kind of pick up this empathy, and then you have a sense of, oh, well, maybe I sound funny in Arabic. And my students will often ask me that, you know, how do I sound in Arabic? Or if we're talking about stereotypes that we might have about the Arab world, the immediate question students will ask is, well, what do they think about us? Which I think is brilliant that they have that question. But some of this earth-shattering or kind of mind-blowing that you're talking about, I think can come in the most simple forms. I teach at Washington Latin. We're a school that every student takes Latin, that we focus on the classical tradition and the great works of philosophy from the Greeks and the Romans, and adding Arabic into that as a part of the same shared civilization, by the way, right? This Mediterranean civilization. The students are dumbfounded when I tell them that most of what we have in terms of classical philosophy would not exist if it weren't for the Arab translators. You know, we don't have the extant, in most cases, we don't have the extant Greek or Latin text from the Romans and the Greeks. It was brought through the Arabs. And when I tell them that, they are surprised. And I'll say, you know, Washington Latin probably wouldn't exist without Arabic.
I didn't want to miss asking you, though, because I know you've kind of sprinkled on it a few times. I am curious because, you know, learning more about your school and seeing how it really absolutely does fit right into the center of y'all's mission. Are the parents on board with that? Like, you know, do they understand that? Do they come having that knowledge? What are kind of their reactions? I always love asking that question. What do parents think?
Yeah. I think the success of our program would not be possible without supportive parents. Okay. And I mean, I could take credit, but the credit is not due to me for the building of our program. It has been parents who asked for the program to become a full credit-bearing program, and as the parents' support of their students taking Arabic and support of their children traveling to North Africa and to the Middle East, alongside their teachers as chaperones, that has been what has created our program. So by and large, the vast majority are hugely supportive. Now, we're in Washington, D.C., so there is a certain level of, let's say, global awareness and kind of understanding that comes with the territory of being in Washington, D.C. But interestingly, one of the kind of motivators that I will use with my students is I talk to them about being ambassadors for Arabic culture, because despite being in Washington, D.C., in a quite global community and cosmopolitan city, there are people in their families who do not understand the value that Arabic brings to the table. So we don't have people in general who are anti, but that doesn't mean that they have any concept for how Arabic is operating in the world or the contributions of the Arabs historically or modern day to our lives. So I think it's a really good opportunity for our students who are not generally facing off with antagonistic family members to offer something of value rather than having to come from a defensive point of view. But I do think our students have a great opportunity to be ambassadors. And there are conversations, without a doubt, that point at, you know, what is Arabic doing at your school? Or, you know, what are you learning in Arabic class? But we don't face some of the kind of, let's say, confusion of, you know, are you trying to teach religion? Or At least not to date, right? I mean, that, touch wood, right? Anything can happen, and it may turn out that people will at some point believe that. But yeah, also as a teacher, I'm a pretty open book. So I will tell them, you know, when we learn how to respond to the question, Kaif haluka or Kaif halik, right? How are you?
You'll learn Alhamdulillah.
We learn
Nashkar
Alhamdulillah.
Allah. Yeah.
And I'll tell them about Nushkar Allah, and that is a particular marked phrase.
Yeah.
That if you hear Nushkar Allah, it's probably an indication that you're talking to a Christian. It's not a guarantee, but it's an indication. Whereas Alhamdulillah might be used by anyone, and it's not necessarily going to be marked, and I always sneeze right in front of them intentionally and wait for one of them to say bless you.
You can do that on cue.
Yeah, well, you can just go, achoo, right?
I was like, I can't see it like you.
Well, we're stage actors in the end as teachers in a way, and so
absolutely. We
I'll
definitely
sneeze
act
and
it,
wait
yeah.
for one of them to say bless you,
Yeah.
and then I will write up on the board bless you and ask them where the subject of the sentence is, and they go, oh, I guess it is God.
Yeah.
And-
Yarhamakallah.
Right,
Yeah.
helping them understand that in fact what happened just now when I sneezed is that you issued a religious blessing. Are
Yeah.
you trying to convert me to your religion? Is that what you're doing, or is it just something we do in language?
Yeah.
Right,
Do we just say God bless you in English as well? You know, or even when we say bless you, like the phrase comes from God bless you. I think it's a, you know, yeah, I'm going to say it's nuanced because I heard a very interesting presentation last year about Turkish language curricula. And because of Turkey's history with secularism, there is no mention in the majority of modern day Turkish language textbooks of religion or religiosity at all, despite Turkey being a Muslim majority country. You know, and we know that across the Arabic speaking world, there are Muslim majority countries. And then there are also plenty of countries that have, you know, different religious groups that all speak Arabic, but not all Arabic speakers are Muslims, and not all Muslims are Arabic speakers. And that's a nuance that we have to teach, you know, not only our students, but our communities. I learned that as a student. I did not know that growing up. It was kind of this unconscious, I wouldn't say maybe unconscious bias. It was just sort of an unconscious assumption.
or blind spot, really.
Yeah,
more,
just a blind spot that I had that I hadn't learned. But I think that, you know, when I was in elementary school all the way up to, you know, I taught high school summer language programs, and now I'm at the university level, you know, in all three of those levels, like religion wasn't absent. And mostly that was because like Arabic plays a large role in all of these religions in the world, right? So like, you know, these phrases aren't devoid of a religious connection, but they don't mean that you are necessarily a religious person if you say these phrases. And so a lot of the ways in which I do that, and in North Carolina, we have, it's not 50-50 in our classrooms, but it's probably 40% students who are connected to the language in some way, and then 60% of the students who have no connection apart from Duolingo or Mango Languages. This is not sponsored. You know, who are just coming to language, you know, fresh, right? And so I am able to ask and call upon a lot of those students' experiences in the language, not to put them on blast or to put a spotlight on them to say, you know, Layali, you are the only native speaker in this conversation, so what's your opinion on this? You know, Yarhamakallah. Is it religious? Is it not religious? Shura ikfi. But to just give them the opportunity to share from their lived experiences, because I feel like that is how we can, I'm going to say, more authentically learn how to engage with the language. So as a non-native teacher, I try and create as many moments as possible for them to engage with native Arabic speakers who are living in the Arabic speaking world or in Arabic speaking communities, because I know I can't give them that opportunity.
Actually, just going off of what you just mentioned now, I've mentioned to my students previously multiple times that we just say these things because they're just like, that's what we heard our parents say, and we don't even think about like what it means. I had to teach myself what marhaban, ahlan wa sahlan mean. Like, we say them all the time, every day, but we don't really have intentionality or meaning because that's just what we hear and we repeat, like, and that's how you learn, your native language. Everybody learns their native language sometimes, or most of the time they repeat without really understanding what they're saying. And I've mentioned, if we actually like thought about the meanings of every single thing that we say, and it would be a very different way to approach the language.
You never speak.
Exactly, because there's
yeah.
a lot of stuff that like, okay, like, no, that's not what I really mean to say when I say this expression or that expression, right? But so that's one thing, but it's also like the nuances of certain things. So like just tying it back to the global citizenship thing, it's and the geography, like the younger the kids, the younger the ages, the less they engage with the geography part of it, although I love the geography part of it, but
they're still learning
the science, it's kind of more abstract in their minds.
They're literally learning how to conceptualize, where's my neighborhood, how long does it take to get to school, what does give me 5 minutes even mean? So I think like they're curious about it and interested to learn about it, but it's still conceptually a little abstract for them.
Yeah. But I think what this means is like from like the get-go, or like from a young age, when they are not lumping together like, okay, it's like all the Middle East is the same, like, right? Like, and then the kind of like knee-jerk, right, blurting out like, Arab means Dubai and Iran and Turkey, and so they start like just blurting out these countries, right? And I'm like, no, just wait, okay, like 101, like, okay, Turkey's not an Arab country, Iran is not an Arab country, like, what? Like, some people are like, they feel like they have to go back and like re-educate themselves from zero. And I'm talking about all different ages now, but like even the younger ones, they kind of, for whatever reason, the mainstream, knowledge or media is just kind of confuses so many things that you have to untangle and relearn. Yep. And that's, to me, like the basics of global citizenship, like knowing these kinds of things is really like basic, and measurable, right? Like if we want to focus on like what tools to assess, what we're teaching, what we're not, that's very measurable. But there's the nuances that are not measurable, right? Like the now that we're in the height of the election season, for example, right? Like there's this one meme, like, and I did mention we don't want to get political. I'm not really, a political person, but this one thing circulating on social media, like if you vote for this particular candidate, this is what our future will look like, because this is a picture of women in Afghanistan back in the 1970s or something like that, right? So like this like one way, very rigid way of thinking, right? Like what's modern or what's contemporary and what's not, like it in images. It's very disheartening, right, to see that at at this time of, like in the 21st century, in 2024, to judge people based on what they dress and like think that, if, certain things go a certain way, we were going to regress backwards. What's backwards and what's not backwards, what's right? Forward.
Yeah, just the question of, we all have this passion to see Arabic language grow as a more commonly taught language. And I feel like it's growing shui. Like I genuinely do, from when I started teaching in 2016 until now, I do feel like it is growing and shifting in these different ways, especially on the K-12 level. But I really just want to see Arabic have like a glow up, like Chinese, American Sign Language. I mean, and I know it's taken them time to build the interest and community of language learners. But, selfishly, that's my passion and desire. So I'm curious y'all's thoughts on what's happening. What do we need to do to grow Arabic, or are there obstacles in our way? Is it curriculum? Is it resources? Is it evaluation? Is it hesitant communities to add Arabic to the language curriculum? What do you think it is?
Honestly, from my perspective, working in Kadima program specifically, I think it's the biggest, and I might be biased really, but like the biggest obstacle is staff preparedness.
Staff preparedness.
Like,
okay.
and it's not the lack of the number of people who can speak the language and who are passionate to teach it. It's just what kind of preparation they've been through. What are they willing to do to, what kinds of programs they can sign up for or teach, what kinds of skills they can teach themselves to step it up a little bit. Like, and I don't want to fall into the same trap that, I was referring to earlier, right? What's backwards and what's not backwards. But unfortunately, a lot of the common or, automatic teaching methods are backwards. And, and there's really no other way for me to describe that. Unfortunately, it's kind of like, this intergenerational thing that runs in
this is
generations.
how I was taught,
yes.
and so this is how I will teach,
Yeah.
and this is how my kids will teach.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is really a stumbling block there, because if this worked for me, this should work. But no, like, things have changed.
It's
and,
different learners.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very different world. If we do not, intentionally like highlight all what's going on right now in the world, make the learning relevant,
Meaningful.
make it actually like translate to something like that they do and they feel value through, right? Not just like just restating facts or memorizing things and blurting them out. It's really, that's one area where I feel like there is a big challenge. And it's not that there hasn't been efforts on this. There are workshops and programs, but I feel like the number of existing educators and existing programs that either are not accessing these kinds of resources and these kinds of trainings, or that they don't feel the value of them and they don't really prioritize it. It's unfortunately keeping stagnation in, in this. This is one way I feel like where we can accelerate the interest if we really step it up in teaching methods, in innovation, in making the learning more relevant and more accessible. Another thing I would say that's kind of a stumbling block is that like we perceive this as a lot of times, and it's not just is not like specific to Arabic, I believe. How is this going to help me, right, in the future? Like, yes, it's good on the resume. Yes, may actually it might open up doors for me career-wise or something like that, but it's not very measurable. And I think one of the podcasts you had with Fadi, he said he would really like Arabic to become an AP class in high school, right? Why isn't there an AP class Arabic in high school? There is Chinese. Chinese is, faces the same kind of or similar difficulty for learners, but we still don't have that. I don't know how long it will take for us to get there and actually have an AP class in Arabic. But then we have all these things, right? Like Fusha or dialect, and
that's another podcast for another day.
Right, but like, no, for in terms of the AP, like
yes,
right,
yes, of course, yeah.
So
well, I think that the College Board has said they will not have an AP Arabic curriculum, just flat out, full stop. And
Interesting.
That, as I understand it, is a simple numbers issue. I am not the biggest fan of the College Board.
There have to be a certain number of AP Arabic language classes demanded across the U.S. to be able to justify
the investment of making the test, right?
Yeah,
so American councils took away part of that issue by creating the National Examination in World Languages, which we have done as a school since the first year that it was piloted, but there are not enough students who are capable of taking that test.
Right.
And so, of course, at the College Board, yes, it's nonprofit, but they have to they have operational costs. And they have to pay test question creators, and they have to pay test graders, and they have to, get the actual curriculum developed. It's an extraordinary investment. My understanding is that they've said, it's not there.
It's not there yet.
My understanding from them is that it is not there and isn't getting there.
Okay.
In other words, they've looked at the growth and now actually the fall off of overall language studying of Arabic and thought that this is not there. Now, I could be wrong about that. That information could be out of date, but my understanding from American councils is that's why they've done that. I think to point to systemic issues is an important one, right? Teacher training, the lack of kind of unified curriculum, the lack of testing at a certain level or AP credit, that kind of thing. But I would almost step back and ask the question of what is it that we want when we say we would like Arabic to become a more commonly taught language? Is it that we want more students to have exposure to Arabic, in which case there are things that our students can do to push Arabic out into the larger community as projects for our classes, as experiential learning activities? Is it that we want districts and administrations to better understand that Arabic is a language like any other? Well, then that's things that we can do in terms of advocacy and working together. Or is it that we just don't like that Arabic is kind of looked at with a side eye, in which case I would offer actually the fact that it is gives us a great opportunity. So I don't know that I actually agree in the sense that I'm not chomping at the bit for Arabic to be the most commonly taught language. I think as it serves the needs of students and as it serves the needs of communities, great, let's teach it. Let's make sure that it's on offer. But the other issue is that what are you going to replace? Because at the end of the day, if we want to point at systemic issues, funding for education is not high enough to add Arabic, in most cases, to other languages. And so are you going to say it replaces French? Well, why? I mean, on what grounds does Arabic replace French?
Right.
Because everything we can say about Arabic is also true of French in terms of global relevance, in terms of being a language of the UN, and in terms of opening your eyes to history. We can say that about French as well. Are you going to say it about Spanish? What do you tell we're the 5th largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. How do you say we're not going to offer Spanish? So I think at a certain point, we have to realize that there is something of a zero-sum game when it comes to language enrollment, certainly at the elementary and the middle and the high school levels. And then that then poses a question for the university of, well, why don't universities offer more studies, undergraduate studies in topical Arabic courses and content-based instruction? Well, because there aren't enough students coming in with the fundamental skills. And so it becomes this kind of cyclical. So for me, Leali, it's not to say that the systemic issues aren't there. They are. But I would almost point at ourselves and say, what is it that we want? And let's go do that. If we want better teacher training, then we need to have better teacher networks and we need to work with each other to get the word out there. If we want better student matriculation, then let's get the word out there and have our students be ambassadors, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I felt this so much when I worked in elementary school. I feel like, when you look at the statistics, the most new Arabic programs that crop up are at community colleges and colleges and universities, because it's kind of the administrative level that has the least amount of hoops that you have to jump through, especially in terms of funding, to get a new class offered or a program offered or a minor put together. And there's also the networks between, especially public colleges and universities and community colleges, where like my students at UNC can, some of them Arabic 102 doesn't fit their schedule next semester. Guess what? They can take it online with UNCW, with Ustaz Mike Turner, or they can go down to NC State and take it there or take it over at Duke while paying Caroline in tuition, which that doesn't exist as much now on the K-12 level. I do think there are some, like I know the state of Pennsylvania has World of Online Learning. We have something called NC Virtual, where basically all of the school districts have bought in to paying for online course offerings that are less commonly taught across the state of North Carolina, to be able to create just more opportunity for students to like take the courses that they want to take, so students can take Arabic. But yeah, like if the time doesn't align with their schedule, then there are those other obstacles. But I think, in my personal opinion, it has to start ground up. We have to start with elementary programs. They can be dual language, they can be immersion, they can just be language exploratory. It could be after school programs, summer camps, Star Talk programs, because I think it's when you start at that age, that's the age in which parents are making decisions for and alongside of their kids. Because they believe that something's worthwhile and they're investing in it. It's music lessons, it's soccer, it's scouts, but also it's what languages are they teaching? Are they going to a STEM school or a STEAM school or performing arts, whatever it is? And so that for me is the time to capture, to like genuinely change hearts and minds, because those kids they're just there to learn when they're at that young age, and they're so off the cuff, they're so raw, and I think when parents and families and communities see that value and that impact of learning another language, in my lovely opinion, Arabic, but it could be any world language, I think that's when they start to value it. And then they're like, okay, well, my student studied 5 years of Arabic, why don't they have this in middle school? And they start showing up to the school and asking, why won't they have it in high school? Why won't there be AP Arabic by the time that they reach 12th grade, because they've studied Arabic for 11 years and they should be able to get college credit? So I think we have to start from the ground up. I don't necessarily have all of the solutions for it, but it's my hope. Well, shukran jazilan to you both for being here with us today. I've learned so much from you, and I just hope that we can continue these conversations. And I know we're all going back to our teaching lives tomorrow. So
I'm still teaching right now.
You're still teaching. You're still getting paid to teach right now. So be tawfiq, inshallah, and let's stay in touch and be well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Shukran.